Yeah, I was in the ER this morning when they replaced all the builder grade for Windsor on that guy. It was pretty intense, but he's doing a lot better now. But hey, listen, I gotta let you go. I've got an appointment here. All right, sorry to keep you waiting. Appreciate your patience. Looks like you're in today for us to look at your wainscot. So we'll get that taken care of. And then I think while we're down there, we're just gonna look at your door casing as well. We'll get this taken care of. You're in good hands. No need to worry, you'll be on your way. Because today, that's exactly what we're getting into here at the Carpentry Lab. And I don't know, am I a doctor? Am I a scientist? Who knows? But I do know that we're gonna get into how we built this wainscot here with this little bump out panel down below the 100-year window. We're gonna show you all that today in this video, so stick around. I think you're gonna enjoy it. So we just received possession of our 100-year window. Dang, that's beautiful. Thank you Brent Hull and Hull Millworks for that. This is really some nice icing on the cake for what we've got going on here. So gorgeous, beautiful, historic window. It's really gonna incorporate with what we're trying to do here and really incorporate into the Windsor line of moldings, which is what we're using again for all of this. Beautiful crispy millwork on our window, beautiful crispy millwork on the door. If you caught the last episode, we made TNG door, and keeping with the theme of that TNG, we're going to bring that into a detail in our wainscot. So our wainscot panel is going to be TNG, but we're going to scale it down because in the same way that Windsor makes that big SPBC8, which is the name of that tongue and groove molding there, they make this is called an SPBC4. This one is scaled down. We're just going to use the back side here and install these just going vertical all the way across here. What we need to do, we need to get our blocking in because you can see we have these wall cavities on either side and we don't have anything to hold our vertical plank boards. That green laser line that has been here the entire time, that line is exactly 1.1/16 inches below our window stool line, the existing window stool. Now the reason we're dropping that 1.1/16 inches here is because that's the exact thickness of our window stool, and we'll get into that later. That's exactly where we want to start our little TNG board. Now I need to take a measurement from the finished floor to my green laser line, and I've got 31 inches. So what I'm gonna do there, I'm gonna cut these to 30 3/4. I'm gonna give myself a 1/4 inch of play. They're gonna be short, and I'm gonna raise each one of them up to that line. So first thing I need to do is set up a stop block at the miter saw for 30 3/4. So with my boards cut, ready to be installed, I'm gonna start at one side and then work my way over. Now, if you wanna get real particular, you can find where your reveals are gonna be, meaning like your door casing, your window casing, and you can find where the middle of your panel is gonna be. And then you can start either with this board split right in the middle, or you could have a joint right in the middle so that when you build your stiles and rails onto the wainscot, your joint lines will be split into the panels. Now for me, this kind of coastal style that we're playing to here doesn't really have to be that proper. So I'm gonna start on one side and just work my way over. And I do need to make sure this first board is plumb because it's gonna be what every other board goes off of. And we are gonna go right there. I've got a gap against my door jamb because whoever framed this did a horrible job. Just kidding, it was us. But even in our little mock-up room here, framing's an issue. So what happened was the board I chose for this stud right here was really bad. I should have thought that through a little bit more since it was gonna be holding our whole door unit. But it's like the real world. You're not gonna get away from framing being off. So our first board is straight, and now we can just repeat that process. I'll just make sure they're flush. If I flushed up my first one on my green laser, I really don't have to reference the laser. I do like having it on so I can see that everything's good, but I'll just make these boards flush with each other. Everything's flush, and just moving my way this way. I like that it's the same element of TNG and then a TNG. It's gonna look pretty cool. under here, of course it doesn't matter. It's all gonna be hidden by trim work, but I'm just gonna keep it flush with that first board. So there we go, we have our miniature TNG wainscot in there. That is our back panel, so that's what you will see behind our stiles and rails. We did come up a little bit short over there on the left, and behind me over here on the right, we have material, but we're not gonna cut it and put it back in there because there's no point. Our stiles and rails are gonna cover that. So a little bit of prep work here. We primed the newly installed TNG wainscot boards and got our plywood going up on our walls. Now this plywood is gonna be covered in wallpaper, but it's a pill and stick wallpaper, so we needed to paint it before we pill and stick it directly to the plywood. So we painted it navy blue, which is what you're about to see now. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna actually add a little more fun to this, something else you guys can incorporate into your jobs, and that is adding a bump out panel under the window here. I said we were gonna stick with the TNG theme, but we're gonna do something a little bit different. Because this is a mock room and I'm trying to show you guys examples, I put together this. This is the same SPBC8 that we used on the door. I'm gonna put this as a bump out under my window. So I've got it already marked out where I want it because I set this up, but this is going to allow my wainscot to have some dimension, and it kind of accentuates the window. You don't have to do this, you can just keep it how it was, but we're trying to show you some cool techniques here. Now, my window stool is actually playing as my chair rail too, so this is gonna help me actually bump out and around. And when my casing comes down, you'll see this transition magic, which is one thing I love about Windsor and carpentry in general, is when all these moldings work together, it's really nice. And real quick, we flipped the green laser on. We've got it right here, as you can see. And I mentioned this earlier briefly on the wainscot, and I said, hey, you could center your panels. This is what I was talking about. So I've got my green laser line right in the middle of that muntin bar there on my window, which is of course in the middle. And then all I have to do, I just got to get that in the center. Got a little mark there. I just got to make sure everything's checking out. And I like that right there. So this is what I was talking about. If you want to get technical with it, you can center so you've got even reveals, much like when we did our door. So this thing can now go in. With our panel in, the next thing I'm gonna move to is our door casing. Now it may seem like I'm kind of jumping around here, but I do need this door casing in with the back band before I can do our next wainscot step. And our door casing is gonna be the WOCS 007, one of my favorite casings of all time. Truly historic beaded molding. Love this molding, and it's gonna look good going around our door. Now we're gonna have it as a 3-piece, which I've done on my channel before, and that is with that casing, a back band, and a back band molding. Now don't worry if that door casing install seemed a bit rushed, because we are gonna dedicate an entire video onto that same exact casing, profile, process, everything for this window. So stick around, that's coming in a future video. But back to our wainscot. With our door casing in, we can now build and construct our stiles and rails. I'll start by getting my stile links. This is by the reveals that I want on my baseboard and chair rail as compared to my top and bottom rail. I'll set up a stop block for my stiles and cut all my stiles to size, and I'll cut my top rail, which is a 1x6, and my bottom rail here, which is a 1x8. Once all my stiles are cut, I'll take them to the pocket cutter and cut pockets in them. You don't have to do this, you could just nail straight to your wall, but I like doing it. It just makes it easier to have them in a unit and move them around, and it keeps everything flush. So once I get these assembled, I'll begin installing them. This is pretty basic. I'll just fit them where they go and nail them in position. And you'll notice on these here that flank the window, I have a little offset there. That is for the over panel, the little bump out panel that I talked about earlier. The over panel will sit right on top of that. So you'll see this come together here shortly. So I'll get my left side in, get that nailed in. My right side will then go next, and the bump out panel will sit right on top of those. One thing I did different on the bump out panel, since it is going to be sticking out, is I glued and shot on little returns to it because I didn't want that to be ingrain showing. Now some people would wonder, why didn't you just cut your stiles longer and kind of sandwich in your top and bottom rail in between your stiles? I don't like doing that because in construction you don't see that. You see this kind of post and beam construction, and the lines should be horizontal on your stiles and rails. You never want to see them vertical, in my humble opinion. So this is what we're working with here, and I think it looks great. Just a nice, clean, simple look. You can see that middle panel that's bumping out is centered. So from here, we're going to move on to our window stool slash chair rail. This is the WOWS001 from Windsor, of course, and this is 1.16 inches thick, and it has that nice window stool profile to it, that nosing on it. We're going to be ripping it down to this size. The actual size is on the left there, but we don't want a chair rail sticking out that far. So we're going to be ripping it down, and that came out to 2.5 inches. So we'll rip that down on the table saw, simple little rip cut here, and we'll just be left over with the length of profile that we need. This piece on the left side of the door is a simple straight to straight cut, and the way I install these is I shoot from the top down with a 2.5 inch 15 gauge nail. That piece, as I mentioned, is 1.16 inches thick, so I'm getting a good bite in the top rail of that wainscot. I feel like it's substantial enough to really hold that piece there, and I'm confident with that install. Now when it comes to the stool here, how it attaches to the window, I will add a screw there. I'm gluing all this together, of course, as you can see here, but where that stool is actually right in front of the window, I'll pre-drill that out. I'll countersink a hole there and then put a 3.5 inch screw from the stool into the window. I do this because a lot of times if a window's low like that, you'll have someone like sit down on it or put something there like an item, and I don't want that to loosen up and you know, be weak right there. After that, we'll begin our little apron piece that makes up the bottom part of our cap. This is the WOCV001, the WindsorONE Cove, and this will just follow that same pattern, just wrapping around the top of our wainscot, but right under the cap that we just installed. And last but not least is going to be our baseboard molding. This is the WOBM002, and this is from the Greek Revival line. This is a nice, simple, clean molding. It's 5.5 inches by 3/4, and it really gives a strong and really simple base feel to this, like a supporting foundation. All my pieces are pre-assembled with glue and pins and spring clamps, and I'll get this last piece in to finish this install off. So with our install complete, we can now move on to getting our wallpaper up, and this really set off the space and really made the moldings pop. And we wanted to do this so you guys could get a feel for it and see how this would look in a finished space instead of in the rough. Just finished shooting this with some primer, filled all the nail holes, kind of prepped it up a little bit, didn't get crazy. We're not gonna paint this, we didn't sand it or anything. We just kind of wanted to get it presentable, just that crispy, clean white that it comes from the factory. But let me know what you guys think. This looks awesome to me. That bead, that TNG, simple style and rail construction. Got a nice chunky window stool that's playing chair rail, a base, simple base profile. Brings it all together, if you ask me. This wall will actually be complete in the next video because all we have to do is case out this 100-year window, and we're going to walk through in detail how we arrived at the casing proportions and dimensions on our door casing. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. I enjoyed making it. I enjoy putting this stuff together and sharing it with you. And let me know if you have any questions or comments down below, and I'll see you next time.